previous talk on slave culture in Muslim societies, and today we hope to speak on decolonizing the colonized Muslim societies as they do exist. Now, the reasons we attribute to colonization, or we have been able to attribute to colonization, have been amply covered in my previous talks. But we need to reflect on the decadence which set into the Muslim civilization over a period of time, when we see that Muslim societies were at the top of the evolutionary mechanism for human civilization. Now, at the prime of the Muslim societies, the two things that were extremely pronounced was the engagement of scholars into grammar and into geometry. Grammar, because they wanted to understand very clearly from every dimension, every possible way, the message of Allah as was manifest in the Quran. And the primary lexions and the aspects of grammar were all probed into at length, and each ayat of the Quran was interpreted, examined, and probed into for different meanings that it did present for various faculties on that affected human society at that given point in time. The result of this particular probe into the grammatical dimensions enabled scholars of that particular point in time to become aware of a variety of new thought and knowledge, which in effect became the basis of all modern sciences and a lot of modern theories, on the basis of which material technology did manage to evolve and come to where it has come to today. Similarly, there was that extreme lust, for the lack of another term, for geometry. And this was so because of a factor of metaphysics that warranted the proof of a God which the they all wanted to discover. So metaphysics played a great role in being able to generate and infuse that inquisition in scholars to find out what the message of Allah had to say, and to find a proof for the existence of Allah to begin with. Notwithstanding the efficacy of La ilaha illallah, that there is a God, there is no God, but there is a God, that probe became essential and is therefore the bedrock of the Islamic faith. What subsequently happened was the infliction of mysticism, monasticism, that subdued the aspect of inquisition and made belief a very superfluous, superficial aspect for social recognition. This sort of phenomenon did emerge because of two segments in society. One was monarchy, and the other was the ratification arm of monarchy in the form of clerics. They both subdued, countered, and deterred the aspect of inquisition, and therefore predominant lot of the Muslim society turned away from the metaphysical dimension of the belief to a very superficial aspect. And in layman terms, it should be understood that we started worshipping the religion more so than the Creator, Allah Himself. Now this has been very briefly the history of how decadence set into one of the most vibrant messages that did come to mankind, and one of the most vibrant methods for educating and finding from the judicial perspective a proof for everything that we believe in and everything that should be referred to as faith. The consequence of this particular phenomenon can best be cited from, in the words of Al-Razi, when he was walking with his few disciples and an old woman standing on the roadside inquired who the man was. And one of the disciples said that this is the famous Al-Razi, the great philosopher and thinker. And he's famous because he has 70 proofs of the existence of Allah. To this explanation, the woman responded, an old woman, not educated, responded by saying that he must have had 30 doubts, which is why he must have had 70 doubts, which is why he must have 70 proofs. When the word went to Al-Razi, he sat everybody down and declared that have the faith of old women. In our day and age, as material technology has evolved, as has social technology evolved, human civilization has evolved, the man of today seeks belief, seeks faith after he or she is introduced to proof, to evidence. And this is absolutely an essential part of the religion, in my view, that there is no belief, there is no faith without proof, without evidence. And this is also a declaration within the dictum for us to remain in the search of the truth. Having said this, what evolved in tandem with what devolved in the ways to approach faith and belief were the methods of governance and was the pseudo-judicial method of ratifying this deformity of monarchy based upon feudalism. The outfall of the emergence of both these factors in society has been their manifestation as role models for the generations that see them, that suffer them. Today, for a young person to find a role model, they look upon a tyrant, a usurper of land, or a cleric to copy, without realizing the oppression they are causing on the free thinking, as is incumbent in Islam. Is not being followed in social orders within Muslim societies. The other factor why these two segments are looked upon as role models is economic prosperity. When you see a cleric, and I'm talking about the official clergy only, I'm not talking about religious scholars here, and you see usurpers in the form of feudals, in the form of monarchs, you see economic prosperity attached with them. So, to the commoner, they represent social status, they represent wealth, they represent prosperity, fame, and therefore they serve as ideal role models. So the continuation of degradation is at a great pace, destroying and damaging the social fabric as it ought to be in Muslim societies. And on the other hand, the decadence, the ignorance, the indifference to the message of Allah is equally being destroyed and being negated. And these are the factors which are at the root of vulnerability to forces that have colonized Muslim societies. So, in effect, if we have to decolonize the colonized Muslim societies, we have to essentially address the restructuring of our social orders based on material justice and no. The laws for this are not hidden, but it is the tidal wave of the norm which has become the international norm that has inflicted this degradation and this enslavement. we have to as an example take the Pakistan nation state as we need to take Pakistan as an example to be able to get the narration in perspective. And we see that the aspects of feudalism, the aspects of the existence of a monolithic government, the aspects of financial disparity have dumped the entire society into an extremely regressive order. In the Pakistan scenario, we have a monolithic government in place. We have alien dictates. We have the absence of education, blocked, deterred. We have the worthlessness of our medium of exchange, and we have an upsurge of clerical edicts and influence that ratifies the status quo. Now here we are talking of 221 million people in the Muslim societies that exist all over, which is nearly a quarter of the world population, that is being destroyed because what is being upheld is an order which is against the requirement or against the message on the basis of which human civilization ought to evolve. Then we have among the clerics the novelty of sectarianism, which is against un-Islamic, very vividly and clearly denied by the dictum, i.e. the Quran. And therefore, these are economic vested interests and strongholds that are being upheld at the cost of the entire populace, which is being destroyed and devolved into a state of ignorance and crime. On the same analogy, not much is different in the rest of the Muslim world. And it has become imperative that to free the Muslim world from colonization, we absolutely, unquestionably have to focus on the very basic of freeing the population from captivity of these two particular aspects that exist in Muslim societies. It is not the foreign powers primarily that have colonized us. It is our own very defeatist, very rudimentary method for governance and the addressing of the understanding of the religion that has, in effect, opened our doors to pirates and robbers and marauders to come and colonize us, and which is what has happened. Universal education, a comprehensive understanding of the dictum, for which there is ample research, there is ample evidence available from our own history, is absolutely incumbent. The absolute destruction of feudalism and the feudal mindset is absolutely incumbent. The destruction and absolute abolition of monarchies is incumbent. And so is the institution of the official clergy that has absolutely no idea about the metaphysical dimension of the message of Islam, where Inquisition has been not only upheld, it has been revered. These are the basic requirements for decolonizing the colonized territories of Islam and liberating the Muslim people from the ailment that inflicts them today. I rest my case.